Welcome to Interludes with Chris Mackenzie. I would like to introduce again John Lanchbery, composer, conductor, a man of extraordinary talent. He has been kind enough to come back into the studio at Golden Days Radio. Welcome back, John.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
Well, it's lovely to see you here. Now, last time, I think we're just going to continue straight on.
Yes.
Because full of stories, wonderful stories.
Well, the thing that keeps coming to my mind is The Merry Widow, because people still talk to me constantly about it. And, you know, it's now getting on for 20 years ago that we had this idea. Actually, it was Sir Robert Helpman's idea to turn The Merry Widow into a ballet. And it was brilliantly done by an English choreographer that I'd only known as a dancer. I'd conducted for him many, many times. And incidentally, this was such a success that we went on to make 4 more ballets. We've done 5 full-length ballets together, this man, Ronald Hind, and myself. But all the old friends of the Australian ballet and so on, whenever there's a get-together, the subject of the widow always comes up. And incidentally, we recently celebrated the 75th birthday of a great man in the Australian ballet, and that's Noel Pelly, who was the administrator for some years. And I led the assembled company in the waltz from The Merry Widow, to which one can fit words thusly: Happy birthday, Noel Pelly, we love you, and so on. And I quickly taught them the words while he was out of the room, and we surprised him with that. Well, now, the thing is that to think of a story set in some mythical country in Eastern Europe in the old days, you know, and to put that on the Australian ballet, how did it work? It worked wonderfully well, and I'm going to show you some of the music that illustrated that, because the second act opens with a very brief opening when we are in the embassy of this little country, and so there are national dances. Everyone is in national costume, and we have the first of the national dances. And then the men pick it up with a brief, brisk coda. Yes, what people don't realise is, well, we don't want them to realise it, but still, this, of course, was really a musical comedy, or an operetta. And so all these numbers, a lot of these numbers at least, are somewhat shorter than we wanted for ballet, because we don't have words, we have to do it with movement. And so from time to time I was called upon, I suppose it would be no exaggeration to say at least 12 times in the course of this evening's ballet, I was called upon to write at least one little melody to slip in to make a number longer, which I could do if the original number was sort of A, B, A in its form. I'd write a C, so we'd have A, B, A, C, B, A, some form like that, so that each number then was slightly longer and rounder in shape and gave more for the corps de ballet to dance to, and so on and so forth. And this very next number is an example also of writing something for someone very special, because we knew, although we had a wonderful home cast, we knew that we were going eventually to have Margot Fonteyn dance The Merry Widow with us as a guest. And I'm talking of 1975, and Margot was born in 1918. So you can imagine life was getting a little difficult for a ballerina reaching that sort of age. She coped absolutely marvellously with it, and for several years afterwards too, because she was absolutely up the top there with them all. But the fact remains, I had to squiggle my way around some of the music, making it sound very fluent, very fluid, very fast, when the choreographer could give her stuff to dance that was not cripplingly too difficult for her. And this next solo for her, I was very proud of, because I think it gives her a certain air of mystery, but at the same time of the seductive woman that she's supposed to be in the ballet.
As we are now talking with John Lanchbery, who... Did you compose all the music for that?
Good gracious, no. It's based on the Hehr
Yes.
operetta. But there were chunks of that, particularly that last number, which were me. And I started life, in any case, as a composition student. My first study was composition at the Royal Academy of Music, way back in 1900, frozen to death, way back in, when did I get my scholarship? 1942, but I was interrupted by the war, of course. Yes.
But have you ever written music that is entirely, all of it, for ballet?
Absolutely. And
right.
oddly enough, this came along out of the blue no more than 2 years ago, something especially for the millennium. There's a company in England. England's very far from a dead old country, you know, and there's a company for children ballet dancers, young ballet dancers, and it's called the National Youth Ballet of Great Britain. Mm-hmm. And it's run by a woman with indefatigable energy and an absolutely wonderful sense of what to do next. And she runs this very lively, very feisty, talented company. And she approached me with the idea of composing the score, especially for a ballet, on a story that she thought would make a good ballet. And my word, she was so right, because the story she chose was Toad of Toad Hall. And of course, I mean, it's begging to be turned into a ballet.
Yes.
She produced a brilliant choreographer, and between us, that's Wayne Sleep. His name, I think, has come to Australia.
Oh, indeed.
And between us, we worked out a very good storyline for this. And of course, they were wonderful parts for the kids to dance, even though they had to wear masks and heavy costumes and things like that. They absolutely adored it. Now, we eventually performed this, and it's been performed a number of times. It had a London opening at Sadler's Wells Theatre in front of royalty, and the company I know are going to be dancing it again this year in various spots in England. These kids, the youngest, I suppose, are 9 or 10, and they go up to 15, 16, and then, by then, the best ones, they're ready to start knocking at the door of some of the big companies, and some of them get in, believe you me. But the only recording we have is this one, which was done for performances that couldn't be done live, when there was no orchestra available, and so this recording was made, and so we can't sort of stop and start. So what I'm going to do is start at the beginning, so you'll hear a very short overture, and then for a little while it sets the scene when we're on the river bank. So it's dreamy and peaceful. Moley is on the river bank, half asleep, and then Ratty comes along, and I think we can probably go as far as Ratty's solo, because Ratty, you will hear, I thought he might be rather Scottish, so I've given him a sort of, and his costume was made to look like that with a tartan and so on, so he's a Scottish rat. And so here is the overture and the opening scene with Mole and Ratty from Toad, which was the year 2000. What's happening here, as you can hear, is they've reached a moment of ecstasy because Ratty has produced a picnic basket and they're unpacking it bit by bit. Beautiful cakes, beautiful pies, and they're going absolutely bananas with the thought of this lovely picnic they're going to have, but they're interrupted by the otter.
What is going on the riverbank with Toad of Toad Hall? Arguing over the goodies in the lunchbox.
Yeah.
In the hamper, rather. Is that on video?
Well, I don't know whether the video is for sale. Certainly, I have a copy of it on video, but I don't know whether it's for sale.
And the music, is that available if anybody should be interested?
No, it isn't. It isn't, I'm afraid. I know. There are too many problems, because in any case it was recorded with another national youth organisation, which is the National Youth Orchestra. You know, there are quite a number of these organisations in England, and it's a very, very good thing. I'm not waving the flag for the old country, anything but. But the fact remains that last year I happened to be over there in time to be asked to conduct a big extract from this ballet, which was done at the Royal Albert Hall, and it was a grand reunion of the National Youth Ballet, the National Youth Orchestra, and the National Youth Theatre, who were doing scenes from West Side Story.
Oh, yeah.
So this is all a very lively scene, and I think it's a great thing.
That's quite encouraging to think that all this is going on in England, because a lot of people think, forget it, but it's not so. Now, you mention here also in your biography the Peter and the Wolf that you did.
Well, now, Peter and the Wolf, well, that was a recording that I made.
Yes.
I made it over here about 3 or 4 years ago now, and the interesting part about it is, first of all, Peter and the Wolf and the instruments of the orchestra, you know, the wonderful Benjamin Britten work. Its name escapes me. Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra.
Yep.
I've captured the name, yes. They were narrated by, and another marvellous piece by a French composer, Poulenc, called Baba the Elephant.
Oh, yes.
They were narrated by Barry Humphries.
Ah.
So anything that is done by Barry Humphries is certainly worth mention anywhere in Australia. And the interesting thing was that this got very high awards in the Gramophone magazine.
Really?
They absolutely loved it. And what they don't know was that I recorded the orchestra with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra in Melbourne, and Barry Humphries recorded the narration all those thousands of miles away in England.
Really?
And by magic, the whole thing was put together. And it works astonishingly well. It's amazing what you can do technically.
Isn't it? What? Oh, well, I keep on being amazed, actually, about modern technology. These think, that's absolutely hopeless and it gets fixed. And I think that, we're going to be running out of time again shortly. Maybe you could come back and talk some more?
You know what I would like to do? I would really love... Thank you very much for asking me, and big-headed though it may be, I'd love to come back. I'll tell you why, because the Australian Ballet, bless their hearts, are reviving, and in fact they revived it last night after something like 4 or 5 years at least. They revived it in Brisbane, where it's going to be playing again tonight. They revived a ballet for which I arranged the music, and it is of particular interest to Australians. It's going to be put into their Melbourne season. I believe it's either the 14th or the 17th of next month. Here I am doing a commercial. But I must get hold of a record, because we certainly recorded it and the ABC brought the record out, and I must get hold of a copy of it and bring it along and play it. The reason why I'm so keen on it is that it is totally and utterly Australian. It's a balletic version of The Sentimental Bloke.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yes, it was brilliantly choreographed by a young man who was for a time in the Australian Ballet and a pupil of the Australian Ballet School, studied in America. His name is Robert Ray, and
Yes.
he rang me just before I left the house this morning to thank me for the fax I sent them yesterday, for good luck, and to tell me that it went damn well, and we're all looking forward to doing it in Melbourne. And the other marvellous thing is that when it's done in Melbourne, it's going to be conducted by a dear friend of mine, and in a way someone who was an ex-pupil of mine, who's been a guest on your programme, and that's Alan Barker.
Oh, wow.
And Alan's coming over from Scotland, and he'll be conducting it, and I must get hold of a copy of that record, and we must play it.
Good. We will make arrangements then. Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
And that was another edition of Interludes with Chris Mackenzie.